Hi friends, I'm Emily Lay, and you're listening to the Simplified podcast. If you're looking for a place to slow down and sort out the mess when life gets crazy, then welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Every week, I invite you to join me for a few minutes to explore practical ways to simplify, organize, and automate the complicated parts of life so you can focus on what truly matters most. Can you believe it's May? Wasn't it just getting dark at 5 o'clock? Not anymore, you guys. Everything's blooming and warm and beautiful, which means that it's almost time for graduation season. And if you're looking for practical and meaningful gifts, I've got you covered. Whether your grad is a planner kind of girl or she enjoys a beautiful art print, head on over to emilylay.com to find your simplified grad gift today. Okay, I want to check in with you really quick. How are you? I know that's a loaded question, but I really want to know. How are you really? If you met me in a Target aisle, I'd probably try to smile at you really hard from behind my mask so that you'd see it in my eyes. I mean, after all, this is when the smizing that Tyra Banks taught us in America's Next Top Model comes in super handy. And if you asked me how I'm doing, I'd tell you I'm fine. And if I were being a little more honest, I'd probably say I'm hanging in there. But y'all, let me tell you, I'm coming off of a huge season of putting big projects out into the world with my team. Over the past year, we've been working really hard to bring you all kinds of new simplified products, which I love, and we just had our spring launch day a few weeks ago. I also got to release a brand new book in March with a pretty yellow cover called Growing Boldly. It's one of my favorite books yet. And you know, in the middle of all of this, I decided it was time for me, the lover of all things audio, to finally launch my very own podcast, which, hello, you kind of know since you're listening to it right now. I mean, it's been fun, but whoa, it's been a lot. When I'm in the middle of a busy season, sometimes I get DMs where people ask me, Emily, how do you do it? How do you do it all? How do you balance work and life even when things are crazy? Well, now let me think about how to answer that. I mean, the short answer is I don't. I don't do it all. And I don't think I should either. It's really a slippery slope, isn't it? Trying to look like you have it all together, the pressure we all feel to actually have it all together. It's a lot. And sometimes I ask myself, where did this come from? When did we all decide that we needed to look like we were doing everything perfectly? Or that we had the perfect husband, or the perfect children, or the perfect job? When did we decide we had to look perfect too? And when did we decide we had to do all of this by ourselves? And listen, that's a whole other podcast episode for sure. But I want to hone in on something this person asked me. How do you balance work and life even when things are crazy? Let's talk about this idea of balance. So the word balance literally means a steady position or condition. Steady. You know what makes me feel steady? Being able to know what's coming, planning for things. But you know what can be kind of unpredictable? Life. Real life is the literal opposite of steadiness. It never stays the same. We can try really hard to prepare for everything that life is going to throw at us. But sometimes our kid's going to get a stomach bug and need her mom to come and get her, even if her mom is in a really important meeting. And at work, sometimes there's going to be a typo, even if careful eyes have checked something a million times. Your boss will request a finished project on her desk at 8 a.m. sharp when your parents have just flown into town. Balls get dropped, plans get changed. Y'all, balance is a myth. At least an effortless balance is. And this is something I forget a lot. I forget that when I balance things, I'm making a lot of choices and compromises all at once. Here's the thing. I like to think of balance like riding a bike. Because when you're riding a bike, you're constantly shifting your weight from side to side so you don't topple over. You never just magically find balance and spend the rest of your time coasting without any effort. Finding balance is something you actually have to keep working toward. It's the same way in life. Some days you may have to put all your focus on your family. On other days, you might need to shift more of your attention to your job, and that's okay. Unless you plow into a rock, which definitely happens, as you keep shifting the weight of your focus around, you'll stay up on that bike. So life changes and you have to adapt to that. But I wonder, what are some things you can do in your actual life today to help you manage it all? How can you create ways to feel like you're not just surviving in your roles as a partner and a parent and a friend and a human? Well, I've got 4 tips that I want to share with you. Number 1, lean into your season. This is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. Because you know what? Your life is going to change, and so will your priorities and responsibilities. Here's what that means. The way that balance looks to a college student is going to look different from, say, an executive climbing the corporate ladder. That college student might put more of a priority on reading a bunch of 19th century novels and backpacking across Europe. P.S. I'm looking at you, fellow English majors. A college student might have more time to spend with their parents or sit around talking about whether 13 Going on 30 was one of the last good rom-coms of the mid-2000s. And the answer is yes. Yes, it was. And you know what? One day that English major might be a corporate executive who still enjoys rom-coms, but she might be knee-deep in trying to think about how to get her balance sheet back on track or writing a new business plan to show her boss. She may not have the free time she did as a college student for reading novels or backpacking across Europe. That doesn't mean her life as an executive isn't fulfilling. It just means her priorities are different. The way she spends her time is different. And if that corporate executive decides to start a family, guess what? Her responsibilities are going to change, and so will her priorities. And they'll change again when her toddlers become teenagers. The thing is, our lives are constantly changing. What matters for you today may not feel like it fits tomorrow. You may have capacity for reading tons of thriller novels one day, and the next, you may be overwhelmed with spit up and report cards. That's okay. Embrace the season you're in. Embrace what matters and let go of what doesn't. Defining your priorities really helps here. Number 2, learn to say no. Once you've defined your priorities and what's important to you, saying no becomes a little bit easier. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to say no and feel like you've disappointed people, but let me be the one to remind you that saying yes to someone else sometimes means you've said no to yourself. And we don't need to live with that kind of stress. Sometimes we have to say no to good things because we just don't have time for them. And it's so hard, I know, but it's true. Be honest with yourself. If there aren't enough hours in the day to check off your to-do list, and this keeps happening for weeks or months on end, maybe it's time to take some stuff off your list. Okay, do this little exercise with me. Write down everything you have to do this week. Every single thing. No task is too small. Then get out your Simplified planner or Google Calendar and try to plug in all those things into the hours of the day. Try to guess how long each item will take. Give it your best shot. Pause the podcast for a second. Go and do that and then come back, okay? Seriously, go. Well, hi. Welcome back. How did it go? Were you able to get everything checked off your list this week? Well, if you weren't, guess what? It's time to take a few things off your list. It's time to say no to some things. And I know, as hard as it is, I promise it'll get easier to say no the more you practice. Number 3, create some boundaries and stick to them. Okay, this step is super helpful once you've taken a minute to name what's most important to you right now. And here's another exercise I find helpful. I bet you didn't know this would be such an active podcast experience today. Okay, sit down with a piece of paper and write down your priorities so you can see them in front of you. Maybe you want to spend time with your kids each night. That's great. Now let's think about a boundary that might help you make that a reality. Maybe you need a boundary that says, I'm not going to check email after 6 p.m. Okay, for someone who lives in their inbox, I get it. That can feel impossibly hard. But let me point something out real quick. When he was in the White House, President Obama sat down to dinner every night with his family at 6:30. His staff knew that when he was in Washington, that time was non-negotiable, and they were going to respect it. And so the leader of the free world would stop what he was doing so he could sit down with Michelle and Malia and Sasha and talk about teachers and annoying boys and all kinds of other dinner table talk. Now, if Barack Obama is able to turn off work every night at the same time, I wonder if we can too. Okay, back to the exercise. Whatever's happening in your life that's most important for you to show up for right now, I want you to write down some ways you think you could make those things happen. Those are your boundaries. And you know what? Getting them onto paper is going to help you turn those boundaries into concrete commitments. Writing them down gives you something to point back to when you're tempted to throw in the towel and give in to pleasing someone else who's asking you to step over your boundaries for their own comfort. And when someone asks you to do something that crosses your boundaries, you don't have to be ugly about it. You can simply say, "I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me." And perhaps you work with the person to find a different solution. I bet you can find one that helps them accomplish their goals, but also keeps your integrity intact. I promise you it can be done. It may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but when you honor your boundaries, you'll feel so much better in the long run. Number 4. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Life happens. We know this. Kids get sick. I have a sick one out here outside my door with Nana right now. Deadlines get moved up. Your partner needs you to show up to a dinner with their boss on a night you plan to relax. It can be frustrating in the moment, but sometimes life needs us to flex a little bit. And you know what? That's okay. For the moments that require a little more of you than expected, try to think through the options available to you. Could you ask for help here? Could you delegate a task? If your kid gets sick when you have a big deadline at work, can you ask your mother-in-law to watch your kid? If your sister comes into town unexpectedly, do you think you could ask your boss for the day off and your team member to cover for you at a client meeting? Again, it may not be the most comfortable thing to ask for help. Hi, I'm an Enneagram 2, and I am the helper, thank you. But you know what? Sometimes you need help, especially when life happens. And you're not a failure if you need to ask for help. In fact, I bet there are so many people in your life who would love to help you because they enjoy being helpers too. They enjoy feeling needed, probably more than you know. Okay, guys, I know that balancing all the things can feel impossible sometimes, but please know that you don't have to do it alone. Ask for help. Wave the white flag when you need to. Say no sometimes. Find your priorities and make boundaries that help you keep them in place. And when it all feels overwhelming, just remember, this is but a season. It will not last forever. What feels crazy today may not feel so bad tomorrow. Just try to take care of yourself as much as you can today and give yourself a whole lot of grace along the way. Wherever you are right now, I'd love to pray a little blessing over you as you try to find that elusive balance you've been searching for. May you find ample time to enjoy the ones you love. May you find work that matters to your whole heart so that you can do it wholeheartedly. May you find the courage to speak the truth of where you are so you can honor that place with your choices and focus. And no matter how busy your season, may you find the things that bring you the joy you so easily give to others. All right, life is unpredictable, and today I want to leave you with a tip that might help you find a bit of calm when everything's feeling a bit too much. This week, I want you to make a list of helpers. Who do you think you can call when you need help? It can be for something small, like a team member who can take notes for you in a meeting. Or it might be someone you can reach out to when you need to make an emergency call at 3 a.m. that no one ever wants to make. Put this list of people in your phone. And hey, you can even offer to be their helper in the future too. We weren't made to do any of this alone. We need each other, especially when life gets a little bit crazy. Thank you for listening to the Simplified podcast. I hope today's episode helps you see how balance might be a little more in your grasp than you realized. For more tips on finding calm in the middle of the crazy, you can find me on Instagram at Emily Lay and at emilylay.com. where you can find show notes from each episode along with links and resources I mentioned here. And you can shop the Simplified brand of planners and products. And if you like what you heard on the show today, then you are going to love my brand new book, Growing Boldly, Dare to Build a Life You Love, which is in stores right now wherever you buy books. One more thing before we hop off. I love bringing this show to you every week, and I hope you love it too. Wherever you listen, I'd love for you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can get this little show in your podcast feed every week. And if you like what you're hearing, I'd love it if you went over to Apple Podcasts and left a review. That helps us get the Simplified podcast into a few more hands. All right, thank you so much for listening today. Bye.